Well, to be honest, a little bit of a long story. When your dad is the judge and you don't want to get in trouble.
You were the troublemaker one, weren't you?
You don't want to get in trouble. So it's like, I don't want to do that. And then I realized being an international attorney is a lot about reviewing contracts and just, frankly, a lot of boring stuff. So I really I like the courtroom. From
Spiciness.
Watching TV, but I just wanted to be inside the courtroom. Let's be honest, I get nervous even now. I got nervous coming here today before I was speaking here. But, I think just thinking about being passionate about your case, knowing that you're going to do a good job, knowing that you're prepared, all of those things kind of help
ease
your
it.
Nerves.
Hi everyone, it's Nikole with Doctors for Accidents Personal Injury Show. This is JP. We're here with Ted Wacker, which is an amazing attorney located in Newport Beach. It's called TBW Law, and we've known Ted now for a while. An amazing attorney. Not only a great attorney, trial attorney, but an amazing person as well.
I just say thank you for having me.
Our first question is, what made you interested in becoming a trial lawyer?
Well, to be honest, a little bit of a long story. Growing up in Seattle, my dad was a judge. And so obviously that was a big influence for me, growing up with a dad as a judge. And so you would think that might draw me into law. It actually was the opposite, especially as a young kid. When your dad is the judge and you don't want to get in trouble.
You were the troublemaker one, weren't you?
You don't want to get in trouble. So it's like, I don't want to do that. And especially when I'd go to his chambers and I'd see all these big law books and find out how much he went to school, I said, wow, I don't want to, go to school for 8 years and all that. But as time went on and got through undergraduate degree and started looking at my life, then it kind of drew me towards the law. Once I was in law school to be a trial attorney, I started looking at my different options. I had these grandiose ideas about being sort of an international attorney and traveling the world and practicing law. And then I realized being an international attorney is a lot about reviewing contracts and just, frankly, a lot of boring stuff. So I really I like the courtroom. I realized right away I liked being inside the courtroom. I don't know if that was just from
Spiciness.
Watching TV, but I just wanted to be inside the courtroom. And I got some accolades in my first year of law school in some of the moot court competitions. And I applied to a big trial firm down in San Diego, and they hired me, and that's kind of how things started.
That's awesome. So when you initially started college, what were you shooting for? And then you just kind of changed your career? What were you going for, what you thought you were going to go for?
When I graduated high school, really the only thing I cared about was playing soccer. So I wanted to be a professional soccer player.
Okay.
And I actually tried out for 2 teams right out of high school. And when I went down to one of the tryouts with the Seattle Sounders, the coach there said, hey, if you got an opportunity to play in college, and get a scholarship, do that. And so I ended up coming down to San Diego State primarily just to play on their soccer team. They were number 2 in the nation. Ended up number 2 in the nation in '87, the year I graduated. And so really I went there for that. Then I realized, okay, probably being a professional soccer player is not really going to be a long-term plan. But in the 80s, I really thought I was a business finance major, and I thought I was going to maybe go to New York and be a financial analyst. And then I started getting into those classes, and I didn't love it. And I was a political science minor, and that was more about the law and the Constitution, history.
Do we have a soccer ball here? Can we grab one and we can see his skills? They still up to par? Or?
Yeah.
So how long have you had your law firm for?
Yeah, so I started my law firm in about August of 2014. So it's been about 8 years coming up now.
Congrats.
Congratulations. How many prior law firms did you work for? You said you moved to like one very big one in San Diego. What made you finally decide like, hey, I'm going to do this by myself?
Necessarily by choice. I mean, anybody has a dream to have their own law firm, but to try to get there is difficult. But yeah, I went to work right out of law school as a clerk for a big firm in San Diego. I think one of the first cases I worked on was the Exxon Valdez oil spill case, which was a $5 billion verdict back in the oil spill, I think it was 89.
89, yeah, I read about it.
Yeah, and then the trial was, the firm I worked for was Richard Gary was the partner that tried that case, and it was tried in 94. And the case didn't settle until it went all the way to the Supreme Court. I think it was 17 years. So by that time, I was well into practice, but I read about it. I'm like, wow. So
it was a long time. Right?
Yeah, and then I went to work. I wanted to work there right out of law school. That was when I was clerking, and they said, basically go get your feet wet, learn the trade, learn the practice. And I graduated law school in 1991, and back then was, if you remember, was the very first Gulf War. Yes. And when that started against Saddam Hussein, basically everybody thought this was World War III, and so everything shut down. Jobs were taken off, bar review courses, or, firms paying for bar review was taken off. And so basically when I graduated law school and then took the bar exam, maybe the 2 days after I took the bar exam, I took off for Europe and traveled Europe for about 6 months.
That's the way to go.
When I got back, I had a couple letters back to offer me interviews. And I interviewed with a firm in LA, a big defense firm. Didn't love it, but I thought I need a job, need experience. And they offered me a job in their Orange County office. That firm was Gilbert, Kelly, Crowell, and Jeanette. So that's where I started.
Wow. When you're in trial, most people don't know this, but I get anxious for pretty much
everything.
And I have certain ways to control it. But when you're going to go to trial, how do you prepare yourself on the day of trial?
Do you talk in the mirror, prep yourself up, loud music?
Do you drive a fast car to?
You can't admit to speeding.
That's right.
Admit to speeding.
Well,
pretend to drive fast.
Let's be honest. I get nervous even now. I got nervous coming here today before I was speaking here. But, I think just thinking about being passionate about your case, knowing that you're going to do a good job, knowing that you're prepared, all of those things kind of help
ease
your
it.
Nerves.
Yes.
And then honestly, playing college sports where you're competitive and it's kind of a little bit the same feeling. Every time you step on that field, you're nervous. And then somehow when the game starts, you learn to calm your nerves. And, I had a successful college soccer career, and I kind of applied those same feelings to the practice of law.
Yeah, one of the things I've done is I just kind of tell everybody I'm nervous, and it for some reason helps. Or make fun of myself, and then everyone seems to laugh about it. So,
I don't really get nervous anymore.
Yeah, okay. Well, in the beginning.
In the beginning, I was like,
and I somehow helped her, even though she doesn't like to admit that.
Well, I will admit that it's not natural for me. I got to be honest. I remember going back to high school when I was co-captain of our soccer team in high school. We were playing for the state championship, and we had a big assembly, like a sports assembly. And we're going to come up there and talk about the school. And my other co-captain, I told him to go first. You go do it, and then I'll come after you. Well, then he got up there. He got nervous. He told the school everything that I was going to say, so I had nothing left to say. So when I was done, I just waved to everybody. I said, I'm good. So I never was too nervous to even speak. A lot of trial is being relatable to juries.
Absolutely.
And I think, they always say public speaking, some people fear that worse than death. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. I think if you're just yourself and you show that, even if you let the jury know that you're nervous, I think they appreciate that.
Yeah. What is the most impactful case you've tried so far?
Well, the most impactful case that I've had as my own firm was not a trial, it was a settlement. And this was a case involving a young kid. When I say kid, he was about 23.
That's a young kid.
Basically, he was driving from his parents' house in Southgate, and he was going to his wife, but they weren't married, but she was about 8 months pregnant. So he was going back to their house on a Sunday night so he could start a new job the next morning. And she was 8 months pregnant, so she stayed at home. And he was driving on the 605 freeway. And I remember when I got the case, there were 2 police reports, and this other attorney brought me into this case, and apparently all these other firms had rejected it. And I said, let's go meet them. We're driving up there. The first police report was not good. The second police report was better. Because it was 2 separate accidents. But it also said, that didn't talk about he had insurance. And then it also mentioned, both police reports said pending intoxication. So I was like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's 2:30 in the morning on a 6:05. Maybe he was drinking.
Right.
Yeah.
All of these bad things were going on. So I go meet him and his parents. His parents were Spanish speaking only. And they had bought this car for him. And there, on the police report, there was no insurance. So I asked the mother, like, there has to be insurance. So she went through all her papers, and she was like the golden ticket. She's like, I think this is it. And what happened was they bought insurance literally like the day of the accident. The accident happened on a Monday, and they bought insurance money. And I'm like, oh, thank God.
Oh, geez.
So because if you're in California, if you don't have insurance, you're considered what's Prop 213, and you can't get general damages. So that was a big stroke of luck. That they had
Life lesson with everyone.
Yeah.
Please have insurance. Don't let it overlap. Don't forget to pay it. Always have insurance.
Absolutely. 100%. Even if it's the minimum, just
Yeah,
have insurance.
exactly.
But this first police report that we got said that there was a witness named Alfredo Salazar, and he said that there was a car going, he was in the number 3 lane, there was a car going in the number 4 lane next to him that was going 125 miles an hour.
Oh, God.
And then that car hit the center divider, rolled over, and then became disabled on the freeway. And then this truck, in the second police report, then the truck came and hit that disabled car. And that second police report said the trucker was responsible because should have seen the car disabled and avoided it. But it's at 2:30 in the morning, the car's dark, not very good lighting. So I'm like, oh man, we are in trouble. He's going 125 miles an hour. How in the world are we even going to get anything with this case? Now, the damages were horrific. He got hit by that truck. He was taken to LA County USC. They told the family, just donate his organs. He's not going to make it. So I go meet with them. But when I took the deposition of that witness, Alfredo Salazar, I started looking at his testimony, and I started pulling out the 605 freeway maps about where this happened. And I saw in the map that where this accident happened, there's a big bend in the 605 where this happened. So I was asking him, did you lose sight of that car for some period of time? He said, yeah, it was like maybe 2 to 3 minutes, and then I came around the end of the road. And so then you saw this car, and by that time the car had hit the center divider, you could see, and was rolled over. So you just made the assumption that that car
was the one speeding.
Pretty reasonable deduction. I think the same thing.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't?
Right.
But you don't know that, right? And we're in court, so we need to know what you know and what you don't know. So that's kind of speculation. So I said that's one possibility, but one possibility too is that maybe Rene Hernandez was in a different car, like just driving Miss Daisy, 60 miles an hour, and then this car came and cut him off and forced him into the center divider. Maybe that happened.
Yeah.
He said, you're right, maybe that did. I don't know. So all of that got knocked out, and now it's just the second police report, and he's disabled. And so then that was the second issue, which is, how do I show that the truck, this big truck, big rig, hits this car when it's 2:30 in the morning, it's dark? How am I going to show that he could have avoided it? I mean, that seems pretty unrealistic. A big truck, it's not like a little Ferrari can go around.
Right.
So that same guy, Alfredo Salazar, says after he came around the corner, he says, I saw that Rene Hernandez. Oh, what did you see? I saw broken glass, the car, I could see it. I pulled over, pulled off the side of the road, went past, went back, went to go help him, walked in the road, in the freeway, and Rene was talking like, help me out of my car, help me out of my car. And he couldn't open his door. And so Salazar went back to his car to get a crowbar because he's a big rig. He worked for a company that had those tools. And so he's going to go help him. And I said, okay, so you were able to see him. And while you went back to your car, were there other cars that saw him and went
going around him?
He's like, yeah, there was like, maybe 10 cars that all went around. I'm like, oh, okay, because that wasn't identified in the police report. So now I have you and 10 other cars all seeing him. Totally unbeknownst, I didn't even ask him the question. He just said, yeah, and I'll never forget, I was getting my crowbar out of my trunk, And right then there was a big rig that was in the number 3 lane and going to hit him. And that big rig came over to the number 4 lane right near where I was. And I felt this big whoosh, of this big rig. And I said, oh, so the big rig, this other big rig,
saw it,
moved over, went past him, no problem.
No problem, right.
And so now I have a big rig, another big rig that was able to avoid him.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the second big rig hit him. And now, just kind of unwound that whole first police report, gave me some avenues of showing that another big rig was able to avoid it. And that really helped the case.
There should be an award for that guy that went out on the road and helped him.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Probably should have got an award, and probably he should get an award from Renee Hernandez in my office because he was the key to that case.
Let me ask you this though. So during that case, did you use biomechanics or any experts?
Well, we didn't need a biomechanical expert because everybody could see that, so that was another key piece of the Alfredo Salazar testimony was, at the end when he's hit by this big rig, he suffered a massive brain injury, internal injuries. And one of my other concerns that the defense could raise is, well, how do we know that happened from the big rig hit him versus some of those injuries happened when he hit the center divider and rolled over. And so one of the keys there was Alfredo Salazar said, I went to the middle of the road on the freeway. And at that time, Renee Hernandez was talking, saying, hey, help me out of here. So we know he was alive. We know he was able to communicate. So we know that brain injury didn't happen from that first accident. It happened from when the second hit him. Yeah, so we didn't need a biomechanical to prove that. It was given from the testimony.
Right. Jeez.
But we did need an accident reconstructionist, and then we hired another company to help us, recreate the accident that we have that in the video that we presented for mediation, and that was very helpful.
I can't even imagine the family and how they must have suffered. And
they were extremely nice family. The mother, when I talked to them, interviewed them, they were obviously this is their son.
Yeah.
They were in tears. The sister, the brother, the whole family, very tight-knit family.
We saw that that specific case originally, they were offering a $3 million settlement. And by the time I believe your client had hired you, how did you come up with the number of, did you see, because the $3 million is $3 million?
Well, yeah. So we went to a mediation, and I think the case ended up settling sort of over maybe 3 or 4 mediations. But, the initial mediation, of course, they're always going to start low. First offers, they're not going to offer much. But
exactly.
Basically, they were saying, look, even if you can prove that our guy was negligent, your guy was still so negligent, or, this other guy that you say cut him off, that driver was negligent. We aren't the primary negligent party. His damages were so catastrophic to live at 23 years old, with a catastrophic brain injury where he really, even though he's recovered, he can't be left alone. He can't live on his own. And just recently I took him, he's a big soccer player, I'm a big soccer player, and we've really bonded over that. The life care plan was significant, but I also knew that we had a big risk on the liability. So it was kind of a balance.
Well, the grand total at the end was 12.8.
Yeah, we settled for $12.65 million, which was basically, the first layer of insurance was $1 million, then we got another $10 million, and then they had up to, another few million over the 10. So we settled for basically almost everything that they had in insurance.
Wow.
So how does that work with commercial policies? Say for instance, an Amazon truck. How much of a liability insurance do they have to carry?
Well,
or what is the highest?
Yeah, a commercial truck, depends on the weight class of the truck. But if a commercial truck is, below certain tonnage, then you have to have at least 750,000. If you're above a certain tonnage, then you have to have at least a minimum of $1 million. But of course, a big company is going to want to protect themselves.
Exactly.
But it's pretty amazing. These companies, I don't know why they do this, but it's pretty well known on the plaintiff side that the when you do discovery and you start finding out about their layers of insurance, they don't always tell you all the layers that they have out of the gate. They play games with that, and we on the plaintiff side have to press them. And I've actually, since then, I have a sort of a standard letter that I send to these big companies saying, I'm not going to trust your answers to interrogatories. I want to, do a deposition of the person most knowledgeable, what's a PMK deposition to uncover that. And when I do that, lo and behold, I find out the truth.
So you had another case that was pretty interesting. We kind of discussed on earlier. It was dealing with a pharmaceutical company. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So
This is
for
another
12
great one.
years, I was a partner at a firm called Robinson Calcagney. And Mark Robinson is pretty much a legend in the whole United States, really the world, in terms of being a trial attorney. He's won every accolade. He's been president of National Abota. He's, inner circle of trial advocates. He got his claim to fame at a young age. I think he was 28 years old or 30 years old when he tried the very first Ford Pinto exploding gas tank case, which we all read about in law school. And in Orange County in 1982, and that was a $128 million verdict, and that's in 1982 dollars. So that today would be like $1 billion.
Right.
Yeah.
So I worked with Mark, and that was really Mark Robinson. To this day, has been the biggest influence as an attorney in my career, and I did a lot of the pharmaceutical litigation work, and we had a case involving Vioxx, and Vioxx was a drug that was manufactured by Merck Pharmaceutical Company, very well-known, reputable pharmaceutical company that's been around for 100 years out of Germany. But in the mid-90s, they changed their whole philosophy. Before, they always had a medical doctor at the head of Merck. And in the mid-90s, they decided, no, let's put an MBA. We're not going to put a medical doctor, MBA.
Oh, gosh.
And so he was a Harvard MBA. And this Harvard MBA, all he cared about was about the stock price. Which,
Exactly.
Officers
Business.
and directors are concerned about stock price for sure, but you can't worry about stock price over patient safety.
Yeah.
And what happened in that case was they had all of these drugs going off patent. So drugs are on patent for 17 years and they go off, they become generic.
Yep.
When you're losing, as a big pharmaceutical company, all these drugs off patent and you're losing all of these streams of income, you need something to replace that. And so they were developing this COX-2 inhibitor called Vioxx. And other drug companies were doing that too. We know about Celebrex. And when they were doing these studies, they started getting these early warning signs and these red flags about how it was causing platelet aggregation, how it was causing heart attacks and strokes.
It's blood clot, guys. It's blood clots.
And the MBA didn't want to
disclose it.
Oh no, you want to hide it and just get the drug out to market.
To make money.
To make money.
Yeah.
And we'll put something in the label.
Only a couple people will die. It's okay.
Buried, you get those drug labels.
Yeah.
And basically, from doctors' perspectives, everybody looks at what's called the black box warning or the warning. They look at those.
They have it on commercials. It's
then you get down to the precautions or the adverse side effects. Nobody looks at that.
Exactly.
Well, that's where Merck put heart attacks and stroke was an adverse reaction.
Oh, God.
Along with, there's adverse reactions of, itching and, silly stuff.
May cause. It always says may cause. They always do commercials like that too. May cause your left leg to go fall off, Yeah, exactly.
So as the drug got onto the market, they wanted to make this what they call a blockbuster drug, which in the pharmaceutical industry means that they got to sell $1 billion a year.
Yeah.
Blockbuster. And they did it. But then all of those early warning signs before they marketed the drug all started coming out as people started taking it. They had to monitor them. And now they're like, oh, damn, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
So slowly they're like, okay, we'll take it out of the adverse side effects. We'll put it in precautions. And then slowly they started
shifting it up.
And they actually had graphs. Like that Merck MBA had a graph. If the warnings goes into the black box, the stock goes down this much. it cost him personally about $450 million.
Wow.
So he had a major incentive to bury that way down, not even in the warnings, in the precautions.
If you guys are concerned about or curious about the black box, if you see regular like pharmaceutical company commercials on TV, and then they always kind of give you those warnings, like this may cause like heart attack or rashes or something like that, that's what's considered the black box. So it's kind of the main things that happen with medication.
But yeah, so we tried that case in New Orleans, and our client was from South Carolina, super nice man. He had just retired from the FBI. And when you retire from the FBI, they do a screening of you, kind of an exit clearance screening. And he had just had that. And in that test, when they screened him, 55 years old, his chances of having a heart attack were less than 1% by even the defense expert's own admission. He then takes Vioxx, and within 2 years, he had 2 heart attacks.
Oh my gosh.
And then eventually in 2004, the drug's taken off the market. Our case went to trial. They said we didn't do anything wrong. And a jury in New Orleans came back and awarded him $51 million.
Wow.
Yeah. You know, a company is not an individual, it's a company. So
Yeah.
You can't put a company in jail.
Right.
Exactly.
So the only thing a jury can do to punish them is to award punitive damages to punish. Since you found fraud and malice, we have a second phase for punitive damages. So you got to come back, and you could see all the jurors' jaws drop. They're like, sort of like saying, "Oh, we already did."
Right.
Oh,
So
gosh.
we argued punitive damages, and then they went out for an hour, and they just added another $1 million, which wasn't very much given the conduct. But what really happened was they had already included that in their award. So we always thought of the extra $1 million as just, you know, putting
Icing on the cake.
little salt and murk, you know, little salt. That's what it was.
Jeez. Oh gosh.
What are the 5 tips that you give
Personal
that you
injury
that
lawyers.
you would tell any personal injury lawyer, someone that's young, that's starting out, maybe they just open up their own PI practice and maybe they don't have a lot of,
Sure.
yeah. What would you say to them?
Well, I mean, pretty much like any job, you have to have a love for it. You have to love it. So if this isn't something that you love, that's, you know, deep down in your core, you have to love what you do. And
Yeah.
so you have to love representing people. You have to love that sort of David versus Goliath fight. You have to love representing the underdog. And if you don't have that, then you're in the wrong business. So that's the first thing.
Yeah.
So in addition to that, you have to be passionate about it. So you have to have the passion. When I was president of the Orange County Trial Lawyers in 2015, they always wanted each president to come up with their own little tagline.
Mm-hmm.
And that has been my tagline since I started, which is perseverance with passion. And I continue that to this day.
Nice.
The third thing in terms of tips is you got to be willing to work hard. So, you know, if you can't sort of roll up your sleeves, you know, we all get dressed up for court and look nice,
Yep.
but this is for juries, for shows, but the real work is done behind the scenes and you know, on weekends and nights and in the middle of the night. And
Yep.
so you got to be able to work hard and really put the time in. And if you don't want to do that, then don't do this. And then I would say number 4 is just preparation. Kind of goes hand in hand with working hard, but you got to be prepared. And everybody will tell you that to be a trial attorney, you have to be more prepared than the other side. And in these David versus Goliath battles where you're suing these big companies, like in the Vioxx case or the trucking case, it's always, if you're the attorney, there's 10 of them. So you got to go against you versus 10 attorneys.
Okay.
And I know in Vioxx, it was our firm versus 5 of the biggest firms.
Cool.
So you have to work hard and be passionate about it and love what you do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, I really
Awesome.
appreciate you coming out here. And
Again, Ted Wacker with TBW Law based in Newport Beach. Thank you so much for coming.
Really, thank you guys for
This
having
is
me. I
amazing.
really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks again.
Okay,
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Have a
Bye.
good one, guys. Take care.